The night sky above Palo Alto was calm, silent, and clear. The lights from Sundar Pichai's office were still on. His team had long gone home, but he stayed back, staring at a faded photo on his desk. It was old, cracked at the corners, but still bright with memory. In that picture, a younger Sundar stood barefoot beside his mother, Lakshmi Pichai, outside a small house in Chennai. Her sari was worn, but her smile was whole. Sundar leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. Even after becoming the CEO of Google, even after the accolades and speeches, there was one voice he still listened to without question, his mother's. And tonight, she had called, but not for a casual chat or family gossip. She had whispered something unexpected. "Beta, Prime Minister Modi wants to meet you, and he asked if I could come too." Sundar froze, not because of the request, but because of what it meant. He hadn't told anyone this before, not even the press, not even close friends. Lakshmi Pichai had never been to Delhi. Not once, not even when Sundar spoke in front of tech giants. She had always stayed behind, not because she didn't want to come, but because she believed the spotlight belonged to her son, not her. But now, things had shifted. "He wants to meet you?" Sundar asked, unsure if he had heard right. "He said he saw my old interview. The one I did years ago when you got your first big job," he said. My words reminded him of his own mother. Sundar didn't speak for a long time. He had never seen his mother cry. She had been through too much, survived too much, to waste tears. But in that one phone call, her voice cracked just enough for him to know this wasn't about fame. This was about something deeper, something older, something sacred. That night, Sundar booked 2 tickets. Business class, yes. Luxury hotel, of course. But the real luxury wasn't the seat or the room. It was the moment. His mother was finally flying. The flight from San Francisco to Delhi was long, but Lakshmi didn't complain. She sat quietly beside her son, clutching the edges of her green cotton sari. She didn't use the entertainment screen. She didn't nap. She just looked out of the window, as if trying to see through the clouds, past the ocean, all the way back to the little street where she had once sold pickles to pay for Sundar's school books. "Mama, are you nervous?" Sundar asked gently. She looked at him and smiled. "Only about the tea. I don't want to spill it in front of the Prime Minister." He laughed. She didn't. She was serious. When they landed in Delhi, the air was thick and hot. Cameras waited. Outside, people recognized Sundar instantly. Reporters screamed questions. Microphones were pushed forward. But Lakshmi walked ahead, steady, ignoring the noise. Sundar saw something in her that does something he had missed all these years. His success was built on her silence. They arrived at the official residence of the Prime Minister. Tight security, a quiet tension in the air. Sundar had been to boardrooms with billionaires. He had spoken to presidents. But this was different. This was personal. A guard opened the main door. A man in a cream kurta walked forward. It was Narendra. "Modi." He greeted Sundar first with a warm nod, but his eyes searched behind him, and then they softened. "Namaste," Lakshmi said, folding her hands. Modi folded his hands back and bowed slightly. "Apko, milk kushi hoy," he said softly. "I've been waiting for this." Sundar stood there, unsure whether to step forward or back. For the first time in years, he wasn't the center of the room. His mother was. They sat down in a private room. No cameras, no press, no speeches. Just tea, 3 cups, 1 table. Modi spoke first. "I read what you said in that old article. How you taught Sundar to dream beyond the walls of your home. How you never bought new clothes for yourself so he could afford his college fees." Lakshmi nodded. "Every mother does this." Modi smiled. "No, every mother sacrifices, but not every mother raises a man who stays kind after success." Sundar lowered his eyes. He felt something inside him twist. He wasn't ready for what came next. Modi looked directly at Lakshmi, and asked, "What do you think India needs most right now?" The room fell silent. Lakshmi didn't rush to answer. She took a sip of her tea. Then she placed the cup down and looked at both men. "Not more power, not more money," she said softly. "Just more good sons." Sundar closed his eyes, and for the first time in public tears fell. The silence after Lakshmi Pichai's words felt deeper than any speech. Not more power, not more money, just more good sons. Narendra Modi didn't say anything at first. His hand rested on the saucer beneath his teacup, unmoving. Sundar, seated between his past and present, felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. This wasn't a business meeting. It wasn't a diplomatic dinner. It was something different. It was a conversation that would soon ripple across India. But they didn't know that yet. Modi finally broke the silence. "Mrs. Pichai," he said quietly, "may I ask where that thought came from?" Lakshmi didn't smile. Her face was calm. "From my kitchen," she said. "Every evening, while waiting for the rice to cook, I would listen to women outside the house. Some cried about their sons. Others whispered how they wished their boys had grown to be gentle men, not just grown men." Modi leaned forward. "And what did you do differently?" Lakshmi looked at Sundar. "I never let him think that kindness was weakness." Sundar wanted to say something, anything, but his throat was tight. He remembered the day. He was slapped in school for defending a boy who couldn't speak properly. He had come home, crying, and instead of scolding him, his mother had wiped his face and simply said, "Never stop protecting those who can't speak." It sounded small then, but it shaped everything. Modi turned to Sundar. "And what about you? When you left for the US, did you carry her values with you, or did you leave them behind?" Sundar didn't answer immediately. His hands gripped his knees. He thought about Stanford, about being the only brown boy in rooms filled with noise, speed, and money. He thought about moments when it was easier to stay silent, easier to blend in. But then, he remembered the first project he led at Google. His idea was rejected. The team said it was too simple, too soft, but he pushed it anyway. That idea became Chrome. He finally spoke. "I used to think values were old-fashioned. Now, I think they're the only compass that works." Lakshmi reached for her tea again, and Modi smiled. "It's rare to see humility in success," he said, "but I see it in both of you." What none of them knew was that someone had recorded a short clip from the hallway. A staff member, not for spying, but for memory. A few seconds of that moment, Lakshmi's voice saying, "Just more good sons." That clip would go viral too, days later. But back inside the room, the three of them kept talking. Modi stood and walked toward the window. "India is changing," he said. "We are growing, rising, building. But sometimes I worry. Are we forgetting the roots beneath our growth?" Lakshmi joined him at the window. She wasn't nervous anymore. She spoke gently. "A tree that grows too fast without deep roots falls in the first storm." Modi nodded slowly. "Would you ever speak to some of our young officers, Mrs. Pichai, in our civil service training academy?" She looked surprised. "Me? What would I say to them?" "Tell them the story behind the man," he said, pointing at Sundar. "Tell them about Chennai, about the water bills you couldn't pay, about the quiet strength you carried." Sundar interrupted softly. "Amma doesn't like attention," Lakshmi added. "I don't speak English well." Modi smiled again. "Then speak in the language of truth. That one doesn't need translation." After the meeting ended, Sundar and Lakshmi stepped out into the sun. The Delhi heat was sharp, but neither of them noticed it. A group of young girls standing behind the security gate waved at Sundar, but they shouted "Auntie" toward Lakshmi. Lakshmi looked surprised and waved back. One of the girls, about 10 or 11, held up a handmade sign. It read in bright crayons, "My mom is strong like Sundar's mom." Lakshmi blinked, then looked away. That evening, they returned to their hotel. Sundar sat by the window, exhausted but silent. Lakshmi stood behind him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You did well today," she said. "You too, Sundar," replied Oma. "You changed something today. I don't know what yet, ... but I felt it." Lakshmi didn't respond. Instead, she opened her bag, pulled out a small folded paper, and handed it to him. "I wrote this years ago," she said, "but never showed anyone." Sundar opened it. It was a poem, in Tamil, handwritten, creased with time. She translated it aloud. "When the world claps for your name, do not forget the silence that raised you. For behind every golden stage is a dark room filled with love." That night, Sundar posted a photo of his mother sitting quietly on the plane, holding a small steel box of home-cooked food. He wrote one line under it: "Behind everything I've done is a woman who never asked for credit." The internet exploded, but that was only the beginning. The next morning, Lakshmi Pichai would wake up to something that no one expected. A letter. Not from a fan, not from a politician, but from the Prime Minister's personal team. An invitation, not for a speech, but for something far greater. The morning sun in Delhi cast a soft orange glow across the hotel room curtains. Lakshmi Pichai stood by the window, brushing her hair, the same way she had every morning for decades. Simple, quiet, without rush. Sundar sat on the edge of the bed half-dressed, holding an envelope in his hand. It was made of thick white paper, sealed with the national emblem of India. He looked up at his mother. "Amma," he said softly, "you've been invited to speak at the National Youth Summit." Lakshmi turned slowly. Her face didn't change, but her hands froze mid-comb. "Me?" she asked, confused. "Why?" "Because yesterday, you spoke one sentence, and it changed something," Sundar replied. "The whole country is talking about it." Lakshmi sat down beside him. "I didn't say anything new. Mothers say these things all the time." Sundar held her hand. "Maybe they do, but not everyone listens. You made them listen." Across India, people had shared the small video clip over 10 million times. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. The way Lakshmi had folded her hands, the softness of her voice, the way Sundar, one of the most powerful tech leaders in the world, had cried at her words. News channels debated it. Students quoted it in essays. Fathers whispered it to sons, and the message spread like fire wrapped in calm. "Raise good sons." Later that day, the car came to pick them up. Lakshmi wore her same green sari from the day before. She refused to change. "This is clean," she said. "No need to waste." Sundar smiled. "You're trending on Twitter, Amma." "That sounds like a skin problem," she replied seriously. He laughed so hard he couldn't stop for minutes. The summit was being held at a grand hall in New Delhi. Thousands of students, young professionals, and future officers had gathered from across the country. The stage was wide, decorated with flowers and banners. A large screen behind the podium displayed 3 words in bold: roots, resilience, respect. Lakshmi stood backstage, holding her small cloth handbag, nervous. She turned to Sundar. "What? If I forget everything, then just speak from your heart," he said. Modi entered quietly from the side. He walked straight to Lakshmi and greeted her with folded hands. "Today," he said warmly, "you speak for all mothers of India." Lakshmi's lips trembled, but she held steady. When her name was announced, there was only polite applause. Most of the young audience didn't know who she was yet, but the moment she reached the stage, the room changed. Her green sari, her bare feet, her humble smile. It felt like someone's grandmother had stepped into history. Lakshmi adjusted the microphone, then began speaking in slow, clear Hindi. "I am not a leader. I am not a writer. I am not a speaker. I am only a mother, and I have come today with nothing in my hands. But the truth." The hall fell silent. You may wonder why I was called here. I don't know either. I only know this raising a child is like planting a seed. You water it with time, not money. With love, not pride. With example, not orders. Some students leaned forward. Lakshmi continued. When my son got his first job in America, I didn't buy new clothes. I bought him a better bag so he could carry his books. When he got his promotion, I didn't go to a party. I cleaned the house because I knew more guests would come. Light laughter, soft smiles. When he became CEO, people asked me, "How did you do it?" I didn't. He did. But I only gave him 3 things: a quiet home, a full tiffin, and faith that he would find his way. By now, the room was still. Not even the sound of phones. Lakshmi's voice softened. You want to build the new India? Then build homes where daughters are heard and sons are taught to cry without shame. You want to change the world? Then change how you talk to your parents. A standing ovation erupted, but Lakshmi didn't wait. She stepped back, folded her hands, and walked off stage. The next day, the clip of her speech reached 50 million views. Memes were made, but so were murals. Graffiti artists painted her words on school walls. Girls in rural villages quoted her on camera. Boys in cities wrote open letters to their mothers. And everywhere, people repeated the phrase that had started it all: just more good sons. Later that evening, Lakshmi and Sundar sat on the balcony of their hotel. Sundar poured 2 cups of tea. You made India feel something today, he said. Lakshmi looked at the stars. I only reminded them of what they already knew, she whispered. The rest is yours to carry. But then, Sundar's phone buzzed. Message. His face changed as he read it. Lakshmi asked, "What is it?" He looked up, stunned. Double quotes A, MMA, ... They want you to meet with a group of village women tomorrow morning, and Modi wants me to stay back. They only want you. The morning air in Delhi was cool and calm. The hotel hallway echoed with footsteps as Lakshmi Pichai walked slowly, holding a small bag in one hand and her old cotton shawl in the other. Sundar walked beside her, confused and quiet. "Oma, are you sure you don't want me to come?" Lakshmi smiled. "This time, you stay behind." He didn't argue. Something told him this wasn't just a visit. It was a calling. A small white van waited outside. Not a luxury car, not a convoy, just a plain van with 2 government women officers seated inside. They welcomed Lakshmi with folded hands. "You are going to meet the women of Asmat village," one of them explained. "They don't have much, but they have strength." Lakshmi nodded, pulled her shawl tighter, and climbed in. The drive was long. Delhi's buildings gave way to dry roads, then narrow paths with mud houses. Buffaloes stood lazily near water pumps. Children ran barefoot across the fields, shouting and laughing. The dust clung to everything, but so did the joy. When they reached, over 50 women were already gathered in the village schoolyard. Some wore bright saris, some simple kurtas. They had calloused hands, tired eyes, and proud hearts. But when Lakshmi stepped out of the van, they stood up not out of formality, but respect. The village head, an older woman named Rekha, stepped forward and touched Lakshmi's feet. "I don't deserve that," Lakshmi whispered, pulling her up. "You reminded us what we had forgotten," Rekha replied. "You reminded us that being a mother is a power." They led Lakshmi to a simple wooden bench. Women sat around her on mats. One by one, they began to speak. A woman named Salma told her story. "My son works in a factory. He sends money, but never calls. He says he's too busy. I raised him alone after his father died, but now he doesn't even ask if I've eaten." Another Manel shared, "I fought my whole family to send my daughter to school. They called me mad. Now she's a teacher. But no one claps for me, only for her." Then Rekha said, "We don't want praise. We just want to be remembered." Lakshmi listened. She didn't interrupt. When they finished, She opened her bag and took out a small notebook. Inside were handwritten recipes, old songs, and thoughts she had written while raising Sundar. She tore a page gently, then passed it around. It had just one sentence. Your love built someone's courage. Don't forget that. Tears rolled down Salma's face. Manel held the paper like a prayer. Rekha whispered, You must speak for us, not just to us. Lakshmi smiled. Then write your stories. Send them to me. I will read them to the world. I have no stage, but my son does. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Sundar waited anxiously. It was the first time he hadn't accompanied his mother to a public place since arriving in India. His assistant knocked. Sir, news channels are reporting that your mother visited a rural village. They're calling it a silent revolution. Sundar didn't check the headlines. He didn't post on social media. He just sat still, thinking of her walking alone through dust roads, carrying the weight of a million unheard voices. By sunset, Lakshmi returned. Her feet were dirty. Her face was tired, but her eyes were brighter than ever. Oma, Sundar asked, standing up, how was it? She sat down slowly and whispered, I thought I was going to teach them, but they taught me. The next morning, Lakshmi received an unexpected phone call. It wasn't from Modi, it was from a school principal in Kanpur. He said, Madam, we saw your speech. Would you come speak to our students, especially the boys? They need to understand what makes a mother cry and what makes her proud. Lakshmi agreed, but on one condition. I will speak, she said, but only if the mothers sit in the front row. By the end of the week, she had received 42 invitations, not as the CEO's mother, but as India's Uma, the quiet, soft-spoken woman, who wore the same green sari, carried the same cloth bag, and spoke with the power of lived truth. And somewhere along the way, Sundar began to notice a change. People no longer asked him, How did you build Google? Instead, they began asking, How did your mother build you? Lakshmi was invited to a national radio show soon after. Sundar offered to write a speech for her. She refused. Instead, she walked into the studio with just one thing, an old steel, lunchbox. The host asked, What's in it? She opened it slowly. It was empty. This box, she said, fed my son for 20 years. But no one ever asked who cleaned it, who filled it, who woke up at 4 in the morning so it could be ready by 7. No one sees the work when it is silent. The room was quiet, but today, let silence be heard. The message reached deep into people's hearts. More schools began celebrating Mother's Day with speeches by students about their mothers. Quiet work. Companies started offering special holidays to working mothers in rural towns. And everywhere, boys were seen sitting beside their mothers, recording their stories. Lakshmi Pichai, without ever asking for it, had started something India had never seen before. A movement that didn't shout, it whispered, and it spread. The city of Varanasi was crowded as always. Narrow lanes, honking rickshaws, shops filled with colors, and a river that carried centuries of stories. But on this day, something different was happening. In the courtyard of an old school, hundreds of chairs were arranged in rows. A stage had been set up, with only one microphone and one simple wooden table. There was no banner, no sponsor, no politicians, just children, their parents, and teachers, waiting for someone special. Lakshmi. She was not a celebrity in the traditional sense. She didn't wear expensive clothes. She didn't speak English fluently. She didn't arrive in a big car, and yet, people had gathered to see her like she was a star. Backstage, a young teacher named Ananya approached her with folded hands. Madam, she said gently, can you share something for the children? Not just about Sundar, sir, but something they can carry home. Lakshmi looked at her for a moment, then nodded. She walked toward the stage slowly, wearing her usual green sari and holding a tiny plastic pouch in her hand. She didn't use the mic. She simply placed the pouch on the table, turned to the crowd, and began. "This," she said, lifting the pouch, "is a piece of chalk, broken in half." The children looked up, curious. "I kept this from the day Sundar came home crying. He had failed his maths test. He thought he had disappointed me. But instead of scolding him, I gave him this chalk and said, 'Your score does not decide your future. Your effort does.'" A murmur ran through the audience. He studied with this broken chalk for 2 months, and after that, he passed every test. She paused. "It's not the marks. It's the belief. Parents must give belief. That is the real grade." A girl raised her hand. "Auntie, did you ever shout at him?" Lakshmi smiled. "Many times. When he didn't eat vegetables, when he forgot to greet elders. But never when he failed. I only shouted when he forgot his roots." Later, as she stepped off stage, mothers surrounded her. They asked about her routines, her meals, her discipline techniques. One even asked if Sundar ever lied. Lakshmi laughed. "Yes, once. He said he didn't eat the last biscuit. But I found the crumbs in his pocket." The mothers laughed with her, but their eyes were full of respect, not for the joke, for the fact that she still remembered every small detail. Meanwhile, Sundar watched from his hotel room. He had quietly flown to Varanasi to support her from a distance, as she had once done for him at school meetings, hiding behind trees. Never asking for credit, his eyes were on the screen as the crowd clapped for his mother, not for who she raised, but for who she was. That evening, something unexpected happened. The chief education officer of Uttar Pradesh made an announcement on television. He declared that from next month, every government school in the state would host a monthly mother's classroom, a time where mothers could share their life lessons with students. He said, "We have professors who teach theories, but mothers teach truth." And the idea spread. In cities and villages alike, schools began inviting mothers to speak. Some were shy, some cried, some read poems, some told stories about hunger, laughter, sacrifice, and love. And for the first time in years, children began to see the women in their homes, not just as cooks and caretakers, but as leaders of their own stories. Back in Delhi, Lakshmi sat with Narendra Modi once more. He looked at her and said, "You've created a wave. What should we call it?" Lakshmi thought for a moment, then softly said, "Call it Uma Ki Awaz," mother's voice. Modi nodded. "And what should we do next?" Lakshmi looked out the window. "Don't give mothers a gift," she said. "Give them a platform. We don't want flowers. We want to be heard." And so, on the next Republic Day, something remarkable happened. For the first time ever, a civilian segment was added to the parade, not with tanks, not with weapons, but with 25 mothers from across India, walking side by side in their traditional dress, holding placards with simple handwritten words. Lakshmi's card said, "Your mother is your first country. Treat her like it." The nation cried. The parade paused, and the story of a woman who once sold pickles in Chennai reached every corner of India. After the event, Sundar found her sitting on a wooden bench, quiet, as always. "Oma," he said, sitting beside her, "you're more famous than me now." She smiled, then looked serious. "Fame fades, values don't. Stay kind, stay rooted, and don't forget to eat on time." He laughed, wiping his eyes. Just then, a young boy walked up to her and said, "Auntie, I want to grow up and be like your son." Lakshmi bent down and replied gently, "No, beta. Grow up and be like your mother." And once again, a seed was planted. The winter morning in Chennai was soft and slow. The birds moved lazily between electric wires. Children rushed to school with bags twice their size, and in a small lane near Adyar, a home with blue windows stood peacefully. Lakshmi Pichai had returned home. The media had begged for interviews. Magazines wanted photos. Schools and conferences across the world had sent invitations, but she declined them all. She only wanted to sit in her old kitchen, make rasam, and wipe the windows that didn't need wiping. Her sari was still green, her shawl still stitched by hand, her bags still cloth, faded but strong. Sundar arrived a few days later, this time not as a CEO, but as a son. He stepped out of the car quietly, without bodyguards, holding a bouquet of simple white flowers. Lakshmi was boiling tea. She didn't rush to hug him. She simply asked, "You ate anything since morning?" "No," he smiled. She handed him the tea before he could remove his shoes. They sat on the floor together, like old times. "Amma," he said after a few sips, "do you know people are calling you the mother of the nation now?" Lakshmi stirred the sugar into her tea. "Names are like breeze. They come and go. You don't chase the wind, beta. You chase truth." "But you changed something," he insisted. Lakshmi looked up. "I didn't change anything. I only reminded people of what they already knew. Mothers are not decorations. They are foundations." Outside the house, neighbors stood silently, watching. Nobody knocked. Nobody took photos. They knew this house was special now, but not because of Sundar, because of her. That night, Sundar sat at his childhood desk. The same wobbly wood, the same rusted lamp. He opened an old drawer and found a thin, hand-stitched book. It was a collection of letters. Letters his mother had written to him, but never sent. Some were prayers. Some were lessons. Some were just feelings she had hidden for years. He read one aloud. "Dear Beta, today I heard you got an award. I didn't understand what it was, but I clapped quietly. I cleaned your room today even though it's empty. Not because it was dirty, but because I missed you. Love, Amma." He closed the book slowly, eyes wet. "Amma," he called out, "why didn't you give me these before?" She answered from the kitchen, "You didn't need them then. Now you do." A few days later, something unusual happened. Narendra. Modi made a special announcement on live TV. "On this Republic Day, we will launch a national archive not for leaders, but for mothers. We will collect stories, recipes, poems, and memories from every mother in India. It will be called Uma's Diary, and it will live forever." He ended with words written by Lakshmi herself. "If a man becomes wise, thank his teacher. But if he becomes good, thank his mother." Soon after, a team arrived at Lakshmi's home. They didn't come with cameras. They came with notebooks. They recorded everything. How she balanced the oil in cooking. How she disciplined with silence. How she taught Sundar to write his first word on rice grains during Panga. Her story became part of India's story, not as a side note, but as a headline carved in memory, and mothers from every state began to send in their own diaries. Handwritten notes, lullabies, photos of first lunchboxes and last hugs. Schools across the country began reading them during morning assembly. One mother's voice had opened a door. Millions walked through on their last evening together. Sundar and Lakshmi stood outside the house. The sun was setting. Neighbors waved. Children ran by, shouting Uma ki awaz. Lakshmi looked at the sky. "Beta," she said, "I will not be here forever." He looked down, unable to speak. "But I don't need to be," she continued, "because now, even when I go, my story stays." Sundar took her hand gently. "No, Amma, your story didn't stay. It moved." A few weeks later, Sundar returned to California, back to meetings, deadlines, screens. But something had changed. He spoke less in tech terms, more in heart language. His emails became shorter, his eyes softer, and once every week, no matter what meeting was scheduled, he blocked 1 hour for a new ritual. He read a mother's story sent from somewhere in India and wrote a handwritten note back to her. No titles, no company logos, just, Your story matters. Thank you for raising light. And far away, in a school in Rajasthan, a boy stood on stage, holding a paper. Today, he said, I don't want to be rich. I want to be someone who never forgets his mother. The crowd clapped somewhere, quietly. A revolution continued, one soft voice at a time. It was monsoon season in Chennai. The smell of wet earth filled the air. Thunder cracked in the distance, and raindrops hit the window slowly, like fingers tapping a forgotten memory. Lakshmi Pichai sat near the window, looking outside. Her green sari was folded neatly beside her. She hadn't worn it in weeks. Not because it was torn, but because something in her had gone quiet. She had done what she needed to do. A letter sat on the table near her. Not an email, not a WhatsApp message. A real letter, with ink that had slightly smudged in the rain. It was from Narendra. Modi, dear Lakshmi ji, your voice did more than any campaign. You reminded us that before a nation rises, its homes must stand strong. We are declaring Amma Divas, a national day to honor mothers, not for show, but for soul. And on that day, we ask you to hoist the flag. Lakshmi touched the letter with her fingers. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just whispered. Too much honor for too small a life. But she agreed. Not because she wanted attention, because she wanted closure. On the day of the flag hoisting, India paused, schools shut, offices closed early. Men who never called their mothers picked up the phone. Boys who never helped in the kitchen made chai. And at Red Fort, cameras zoomed in on a woman in a simple green sari, walking slowly toward a white rope. Lakshmi stood before the flag. Her fingers shook, slightly. Not from fear, but from memory. She remembered the days when she didn't have gas in the stove. She remembered standing in line for water. She remembered patching Sundar's school uniform with the thread from her own blouse. She remembered the silence she carried for years, and now, that silence was no longer a burden. It was a gift. As she pulled the rope, the flag rose, and the wind picked up, not wild, just enough to lift the cloth and let it wave. And when it waved, people clapped, not for the flag, but for the mother who had raised the hand that raised the rope. That evening, Sundar sat beside her, under the old banyan tree, in their neighborhood. No reporters, no guards, no crowds, just mother and son. Amma, he said softly, do you know what you did? Lakshmi looked up. I only raised a flag. No, he whispered. You raised a country. They sat in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't need words. Months passed. Lakshmi stopped attending events. She stayed home, watering the small plants on her windowsill, feeding birds, teaching nearby girls how to sew. People still sent letters, but she replied only to one group. Mothers. She answered in her own handwriting, in Tamil or Hindi, and sometimes even sent recipes, along with the letter. She would end each note with one simple line. You are the first school. Never forget your strength. Years later, when Lakshmi passed away, no one knew at first. There was no breaking news, no loud headlines, just a quiet message from Sundar. Amma slept peacefully. Her story will stay awake forever. Her funeral was simple. No garlands of power, only flowers of gratitude. Women from villages she had visited walked barefoot to pay their respects. Schoolboys stood silently, holding notebooks with her quotes written inside. And somewhere, a young girl whispered to her mother, I want to grow up and be like her. Sundar didn't speak that day. He didn't need to. The silence spoke. Months later, in her memory, a small open library was built in Chennai. Inside were not business books, but diaries, Oma diaries, collections of stories, recipes, letters, and lullabies from mothers all across India. Children came to read them. Some cried, some smiled, but all of them learned something they didn't learn in school. In a glass frame near the entrance of the library, there was one photo, not of Sundar, not of Modi, just Lakshmi, sitting quietly, holding a lunchbox in one hand, ... and a chalk piece in the other. Below it were these words: "She didn't change the world, she changed one boy, and he did the rest." And that was how a simple mother, with one sorry and a soft voice, became the echo that changed millions, not with noise, but with grace.